Hello everybody, I am George, and today I share with you an ultra-aggressive opening, called the Reti opening. It was introduced to chess master level in the early 20s, where it was very often played to defeat the former chess champion José Raúl Capablanca, who forfeited the world chess champion title in 1927. With the passage of time, Reti popularized its moves against all defenses in the spirit of hypermodernism and became a strongly structure-powerful opening. The Reti starts with knight f3, a move which enables white to control the center. Knight f6, d5, c5, and even knight c6 are black's most powerful choices, but you always reply with c4, the main line of the Reti. In most cases, black captures the pawn on c4, which is going to be recaptured by white in a few moves later. Other players just push it forward with the purpose of gaining space and supporting the pawn later. Others just play c6, creating a pawn chain. Knight c6 our final good option. Now let's see the traps that make this opening aggressive. Trap number 1. This trap starts with a symmetric knight variation where instead of playing c4, the main line of the opening, you foster a strong kingside fianchetto. If black counterattacks with a queenside fianchetto as usual, you simply castle. After bishop e7, the most common response is d3, and then black pushes its pawn to d5, but you just connect the knights. Most players move the bishop at this point in order to castle next. You play the surprising move, e4, sacrificing a pawn at the center. Black has 3 attackers on this square, whereas you only have 2, the knight and the pawn. After making the exchange, your opponent can grab your pawn either with the bishop or with the knight. Guess what? Both of these options are losing mistakes, and thanks to a few tactics, you're gonna win the game. If your opponent grabs your pawn with the bishop, you simply make another exchange. Of course, you are not going to exchange your queen as you are -1 in material. Put your knight on d4 instead, and you are on the right track. Your perfectly centralized bishop pins the knight to the rook, and the best way for black to defend this position is pawn to f5. Obviously, you capture on e6, and now both sides are equal in material. A queen exchange then may follow, but to be honest, black has a completely crushed position and can no longer defend it. Let's see why. The white knight threatens a fork on c7, so the black knight has to go to a6 to prevent it. Also, white has the great option knight captures g7 check, where all black pieces are hanging and black simply resigns. Trap number 2. If black captures the pawn with the knight, you demonstrate your exceptional knowledge of tactics as you centralize your knight on e5 while revealing an undiscovered attack fostered by the fianchetto. In case he supports with f5, take it easy. You give a check with your queen, preparing a checkmate on f7, but he will obviously block it with his pawn. In the next move, you capture the pawn with your knight, and he cannot recapture due to this potential pin. If your opponent has no brain, he is going to capture it, and therefore he will lose a rook. However, it is very rare to find so idiotic opponents. Your opponent will probably play knight f6, which threatens your queen. You will surely retreat, but after this exchange, you will skyrocket your advantage in material. Back to our position, f5 is a mistake, but the most common move, knight c5, is also a weakness, because after the exchange, queen f3 is a fatal move as the knight and the rook are threatened, and a checkmate is being prepared on f7 simultaneously. Therefore, black will castle, and the black knight is dead. So black will possibly resign unless you play a blitz game where subversions are possible. Trap number 3. Some of your opponents will put their bishop on f6 to kick the white knight away. In that case, you capture on e4, threatening the bishop on f6. After that move, you sacrifice the knight. And after that, you exchange queens, and then you grab his bishop and his rook. Trap number 4. This trap starts with the main line where white plays c4 immediately. Suppose that black captures the pawn, as it is the second most common response. You push forward the knight. Black may play knight f6, but then you play e4 to open your bishop's diagonal. 3 out of 4 players here will play knight c6. Take it simple. The bishop recaptures. e5, a straightforward response. Play d3, and this pawn chain will give you dominance at the center. Some of your opponents may move their knight on a5 to threaten your bishop. Don't worry. You give a check. The knight will retreat to block the threat. Knight d5 strikes to the center, causing various problems to the black defense. You recapture with the pawn, and the pinned knight is completely helpless. At this point, some of your opponents may play a6, which seems interesting. In fact, it's a losing mistake. Let's see why. First of all, the purpose of a6 is to fork the 2 major pieces after capturing the knight. However, white can capture the pawn as it is pinned to the black rook.